The kids were still asking for more, and the guy was generous and told them to eat as much as they wanted. Hui Seo heard a kid say that when he grew up, he would become a person like Taesan. He didn't think Taesan would come to the orphanage. Hui Seo opened the gate and saw the kids sitting and eating grilled meat outside the yard. The kids also told him to come and eat with them. Seeing him come back, everyone was happy. Taesan knew Hui Seo was back and also called him to grill meat for the kids. He didn't understand why Taesan was at the orphanage at such a late hour. The kids ran out like crazy and dragged him in to join them. Taesan introduced his parents to Hyun Seo. He also greeted them politely and bowed his head, but he saw that next to Taesan's parents there were dozens of boxes of apples. They said they bought some apples for the kids to eat, but Hyun Seo thought that was too much. This amount would be enough for the kids in the orphanage to eat for several months. There was also a pile of food that Taesan often ate with him. He didn't think Taesan would help him so much. Taesan told Hyun Seo not to stand there anymore, and quickly came to help him grill the meat. Hurry up! He was touched by the brother who shared his hardships and didn't hesitate to help him. Hyun Seo really wanted to thank Taesan. The next day, Taesan went to the real estate agency. He asked if there was any place that had an abandoned school. The agent heard his request and said there were a few places left. Taesan wanted to buy a place that was convenient for the kids to go to school. The agent showed him a school that was 10 minutes away from the city by car. The equipment in the school was still usable, so both the location and the furniture were very expensive. Taesan asked how much it was. The agent quoted $1.5 billion. That was quite expensive, but it was still cheap for 100 people in the orphanage. Taesan bought it right away. He also wanted to buy the hill behind the mountain for the kids to run around and have fun. The agent was shocked that he bought the whole hill behind the school. He asked the agent to do the paperwork for him, but he put his mother's name, with the intention of donating it to the orphanage. Taesan also called someone who was the director of his high school. He asked how he was doing. He wanted him to help him renovate the abandoned school he just bought into an orphanage. He told the director that money was not a problem, he just had to fix it as fast as possible. The agent was surprised that the kids nowadays were so decisive. Taesan called another person. He called the city inspector to deal with this issue. The inspector asked what the issue was. Did the thugs in his neighborhood cause trouble again? This time it was different. Taesan wanted to file a civil complaint. He wanted to get some justice for the orphanage. He also took care of the corrupt bunch who sat in luxury and ate gold. Taesan told the inspector that his friend who lived in the orphanage was being forced to move, but they were not given a new place to stay. The mayor and the prosecutor were very suspicious of this matter. He wanted the inspector to put some pressure on them. This time there was also the mayor and the prosecutor, so it might be a bit tense. He asked if he had to sue them. He wanted him to help them defend the orphanage for free. As for the money issue, he would solve it. He would send the details to the inspector when he got home. That way, Taesan solved this problem and Hyun Seo would be able to go back to school soon. Because of this problem, he still had a bunch of homework to do at home, and also the stock market transactions. Now Taesan had to go back and settle the profits from the US stock market crash before it stabilized again. The stocks that Taesan invested in technology companies started to rise. Google's stock rose above the average compared to the current level of US companies. But he couldn't keep investing in Google. Soon, the value of this company would also decrease. By then, Taesan would invest in both Apple and Amazon. He finished his work today, so he could turn off the computer and rest. But before sleeping, he had to watch that movie. As soon as he opened the website, his computer exploded. This time, Taesan was dragged to a river bank covered by snow. Looking around, it was desolate, with only a leafless tree by the shore. There was also a boat to cross the river. This time, it was an old man with a cane who came to him. He only introduced his surname as Jang Taesan didn't remember anyone in history with that surname. The old man said he was about to cross the river. He asked Taesan what he was. Taesan knew that crossing the river was something that all the dead had to go through. But in his previous life, he was spared. But now he was standing on the river that all the dead had to cross. Taesan thought he was the death god who was about to take him to reincarnate. But the old man said he was not the death god. He told him not to be afraid. He was the one who crossed the river. If he was not a god, why did he call him down here? He said of course he was a god. But Taesan didn't understand him very well. He said if he ascended, he wouldn't have to cross this river. But he didn't want to ascend. He explained to Taesan that everyone who died had to cross the river to reincarnate. But he didn't want to become an immortal. So he was just connecting with him. Taesan didn't understand why he showed him the way to cross the river. The old man said he wanted to thank him. The ferryman of the river asked which gentleman had ordered the ferry. He introduced himself as Rich Chot Kong. He was the one who would guide the old man to reincarnate. He looked like a racer. He said it had been a long time since anyone took the ferry. Now people took trains, cars, etc. The good thing about taking the ferry like this was that there was no fee. The old man said he had to go now. He still turned to thank Taesan. Because thanks to him, the future of his descendants changed. He would definitely repay him. Taesan watched the old man get on the boat and remembered the people who played with him with the surname Du. There were exactly 2 people. One was lawyer Du, 2 were Hui Seo. If it was the person he helped, then this must be the ancestor of Hyun Seo. Richard drove the boat and felt Taesan was very familiar. In the human world, at the Canadian bank, all the employees had a headache. Because Taesan's private fund dumped a huge amount of money into their trading floor. The investigators found out that the fund was not only dumped into the Canadian market, but also into the markets in London, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Dumping funds like this would cause their trading indicators to drop. The director didn't know what to do. He just told the staff to withdraw from the markets. Before being controlled. If the number of transactions continued to increase, they would only have to eat dirt. At Taesan's fund office, they worked lightly, without any pressure, because they were putting most of the pressure on the trading floors. Just today, they made $3 billion. Looking at the poster of President Obama's election made Robert's mood very excited. Today, his office had helped this president a lot, and soon everything would be easier. Robert was looking forward to the next instructions from Taesan. He wondered what he would do next, and hoped for the best. Taesan called Robert in the US right away. He asked how Robert was doing, and if everything was okay there. Taesan asked about the work related to the banks in the US. Robert said they were outside the meeting room, waiting for him to work. All of this was thanks to the boss. Taesan modestly did not take credit for himself, but said that he remembered Robert. Without him, he wouldn't know who to give the work to. Taesan said that he would announce the investment tomorrow, so Robert should be responsible for receiving the partners. He told him to rest assured, he could handle it. He said he would see Robert again on winter break. He didn't understand why there was a winter break. He joked, then asked about the political situation. Robert still followed his advice. Taesan wanted Robert to pay more attention to them. Then he made an appointment to meet him in Hong Kong in December to discuss the next steps for the new year. Robert hung up. Although Taesan was younger than him, he was still afraid of his momentum. This time, the amount of money that Taesan announced to invest would give him full authority to decide, but this number was up to $20 billion. It was too big for him to decide how to use it. Robert didn't think Taesan would trust him with this amount of money without any doubt. The initial investments were extremely safe, and this investment had no defense at all. Robert felt that Taesan's investment method was like a knight pointing his spear at the enemy. No matter what, Robert believed that he was always right, and this would be the trend of stock investment in the future. Robert looked at Taesan's plan, and from now on he would be the head of the merger and acquisition team of the group. Among the companies that he told him to focus on, Robert saw the name of Johnson Group. He didn't understand why Taesan separated it like that. In Korea, after Taesan accidentally mentioned the winter vacation, he was afraid that Robert would know that he was still a student. But this was his last vacation anyway. He felt that time passed very fast, and Taesan would take the college entrance exam soon. Taesan's student life would end, and he still couldn't believe that he could own 70 billion in his hand. He had to pinch his cheek to see if he was dreaming. Even though he had a lot of money in his hand, he still felt that he lived simply. An apartment, a car, that was not too extravagant at all. Taesan wondered if he should spend more. But now he had to study, and he would think about spending money next year. Lawyer Du informed him that the city office failed in the inspection. Taesan could work without any difficulty. Taesan thanked the lawyer, but he said don't be polite when he was also receiving his salary. But thanks to Lawyer Du, things were much easier. After all, he was a stubborn and hard-headed guy. Lawyer Du said that the mayor didn't want to confess at first, but he just showed him some internal data and he spit it all out. Lawyer Du said that if he called, the old man would be scared to death. Let him see. Taesan said that Lawyer Du was still awesome, and as soon as he took action, those guys wouldn't dare to bark anymore. He told Lawyer Du that he wanted to invest in a law firm. Taesan wanted him to buy shares to make it easier to invest. He asked him how much percentage of shares he wanted. Taesan said 30%. Lawyer Du thought that 30% of a law firm was simple, and that much would make him the CEO. He asked him which company he was interested in. Taesan leaned on the railing on the balcony and said he wanted to get to the point. He wanted to know how much money 30% of shares was. Lawyer Du thought that if it was 30% of the top 3 law firms in Korea like his company, it wouldn't be cheap at all. Taesan offered 100 billion. The lawyer couldn't believe it. He didn't think that he really offered that price for his company. He said that if he didn't believe it, he had to believe his bank account. Lawyer Du agreed to buy it right away. Taesan hung up the phone, thinking that 100 billion was a price that no company would refuse. But his phone rang again. Taesan opened it and heard who was calling him at this time. The person said, "Appa, it's me." Before this, except for the twins, no one called him Appa. Taesan asked who it was, and the other side said how he had forgotten them. He recognized the voice. It was Seo Jun. She asked him if he was really dating Jae Jin. Seo Jun couldn't believe how he had forgotten her voice like that. She shouted so loud that Taesan had to put down the phone to avoid getting deaf. It had been more than a year, and she hadn't contacted him, so he almost forgot her. He said, "Sorry, girl." Then he asked, "How are you doing these days?" He also asked if she was going to debut next week. Seo Jun didn't think he would know about that. She said, "On the internet, every news site is reporting that the entertainment company FOB is preparing to launch a girl group." Seo Jun asked, "Who were you talking to earlier that took so long? I called you for a long time and couldn't reach you." Taesan said, "I was talking to a lawyer." Speaking of lawyers, she asked, "Did you fight with some thugs again?" Taesan said, "Don't mention it anymore. I quit that life now. The thing I was talking about was a business issue." She asked, "Why business? Aren't you going to college?" She reminded him that he wanted to study law. Taesan said, "I have an interview tomorrow." She said, "You will pass for sure. Seo Jun will drink rice water and pray for you to pass." She also said, "Whenever you need me, I will appear to take care of you." But now she was called by her manager. She said she would talk to him later. Taesan thought, she is always so cute. The next day at the Korean Law University, the yard was already crowded with people who came to interview. The selection rate for college in Korea is very high. Even if you have high test scores, but your essay and interview are not good, you will be rejected. Taesan waited outside. He didn't expect to have a day when he would be interviewed at the law school. Because the school will not recruit more next year, everyone used their full capacity hoping to pass this year. Thanks to his grandfather, Taesan had a chance to study here. The professor told everyone to line up and wait for their turn to interview. Everyone was dressed neatly as if applying for a job. Everyone looked at the exit. They were all attracted by the beauty. A female student was walking towards them and everyone surrounded her like a star. Tessa recognized her as his senior Jae-Jean. She changed her style of dressing. Jae-Jean greeted everyone. The boys smiled and asked if she needed any help. The professor said, "I thought Jae-Jean went to work at Syl Lem District." Jae-Jean said, "I only went for a few days." She wanted to come back to school because her junior from the countryside came to interview. She approached Taesan. As soon as he recognized her, Taesan almost didn't recognize her because of her different style of dressing. She said, "Long time no see. I was busy, so please understand me." He didn't expect her to start a conversation with him when there were so many people. She thought he wouldn't care. But Taesan said coldly, "Why should I understand you?" She didn't expect him to be so cold to her. Jae-Jean still shamelessly said, "Don't be mad at me." She even invited him to have lunch after the interview. She said she had a lot of things to tell him. Taesan said, "I'll contact you when I'm done." If it was before, he would have agreed right away. Not wanting to lose face, Jae-Jean said, "I'll wait for you at the gate of the school." The curious people surrounded them to see what was going on. They pointed at him and said, "Aren't you Jerry's target?" They also brought up the love story of Young Seo and Jae-Jean Ra. The guys cried because they didn't get Jae-Jean's attention. But Taesan was different. He knew Jae-Jean was very scheming. She would cling to anyone if she could. Jae-Jean Ra outside, everything he said was not in her plan at all. The steps that had seemed confident, her expression was all acting. She praised herself for doing a great job. Since that day, Jae-Jean went to ask everyone about Taesan. She heard that his family's business was booming. He was also a descendant of a noble lineage. She always felt that Taesan's demeanor and quality were different from others. She was sure that Taesan would pass. The professors always chose the ones with good qualities. Suddenly, her classmates appeared and asked her what she was doing here. Jae-Jean said, "My junior was interviewing, so I came." They asked, "Is he your relative?" Jae-Jean was embarrassed and said, "He is just a junior who lives near me." Her friend realized, "Did you fall for your junior too?" They teased, "You like that junior, don't you?" But Jae-Jean said, "No, I don't." Then she asked, "Why did they come here too?" They came because they wanted to verify a rumor. Jerry didn't know what the rumor was. They said, "There is a handsome guy who looks like a model who also came to interview." As a person who loves handsome guys, they also came to see what he looked like. Jae-Jean didn't think she would have so many rivals. She decided not to give Taesan to anyone. Taesan finished the interview and left. He thought the interview would be very difficult, but the law school was also simple for him. Looking at the faces of the professors, they couldn't make it hard for him. Taesan was confident that he would pass for sure. Now he drove his beloved car out to find something to eat. When he got to the gate, Taesan saw Jae-Jean still waiting there. He didn't care about the person who made him suffer anymore. What was that about going to lunch after the interview? What should he do now? She changed her phone number and he didn't have it to call. So Taesan ignored Jae-Jean and drove straight home. Now everyone went their own way. The Taesan she knew was dead. He left Jae-jin hanging like that. The end of the year was the busiest shopping time. The US dollar market returned to activity after being delayed for months. But Taesan knew that another crisis would happen when this winter ended. But those who didn't prepare would be stripped of everything. Taesan knew it was time for him to launch a new sweep. At his apartment, Taesan anxiously waited for the result. He had been waiting for this moment for so long that he didn't dare to breathe hard. He pressed the registration number to confirm his result. The phone announced, registration number 44, candidate Jang Taesan, Law School of Korea University. He stared at the screen of his mobile phone. It announced that he had passed. Taesan officially became a law student. He called his mother at home to announce. He said, "I passed, Mom." His mother was happy and crying. She called her husband and said, "Our son passed, honey." His parents were both proud of him. They should be. He was the pillar of the family. Taesan passing the law school was also one of the ways he repaid his parents' kindness. His parents would be happier when they had a son who studied at the most prestigious school in the country. But as soon as he announced it, he received a phone call from the director of the publishing company. He asked about his health. Taesan said, "I'm fine and I just passed the Korean Law University." He congratulated him. Now he became his senior. Taesan asked, "Is there anything wrong?" The director wanted to say, "Thanks to your work, the publisher made a lot of money." But there was a problem, he needed to tell him. Taesan asked what it was. The director said there was a person he didn't remember the name of, but he had submitted a novel called Magic Warrior to the publisher. The director still had his manuscript. Taesan couldn't believe what he had just heard. He repeated the name of the novel that the director had just said. The publisher said it was no different from his novel. He said the other person could be criticized for plagiarism, but why did he dare to claim that the almost copy of his story was his own? The director scolded him and kicked him out. Taesan realized how he could forget the main author of a novel. He realized he had stolen everything from the writer John Heiss. The director said the other person insisted he had written that work since last year, and even showed him the drafts. Taesan pretended to understand the director's feelings. Taesan now had to figure out how to compensate the author for the theft. The director said he also showed him another draft. He asked what the work was about. The director said the work was called I Am a Noble. Taesan knew this work. He knew the work I Am a Noble would lead the isekai trend. It had created a wave since the ebook was born. Since then, there have been a series of novels about it, games and martial arts. Taesan told the director to take the story. He knew the writer John Heiss had an interesting view of the other world, so this work would surely be a hit. Taesan said he had a feeling like that. He wanted the publisher to print 5,000 copies in the first edition. He would guarantee 10,000 copies for them. Because he had used the writer's passion as the foundation for his show of wealth, he wanted to fix his mistake for his conscience. Later, if he had a chance, Taesan would invite the writer to a bowl of tteokbokki. At the end of the year, at the shopping center, everyone was happily shopping for a new season. The shopping center was bustling like that. Taesan took his mother to go shopping. He hadn't been back here for a long time. Usually Taesan only ordered custom-made clothes. He asked his mother if she hadn't been here for a long time. His mother said it had been about 10 years since his father retired and they moved back to the countryside. Taesan wondered why his mother, who was both beautiful and smart, married his father. She clearly could have married someone more worthy. His mother said his father loved her at first sight, so he wanted to date her. And at that time, his father was also handsome, so she agreed right away. His father also loved his mother very much. He always said that without her, he didn't want to live anymore. Taesan was a bit jealous of his father. His mother asked why he brought her here. Taesan took his mother to look around. Anyway, they didn't forbid them. Entering the store, the staff greeted him and his mother politely. Taesan told his mother to buy some clothes for herself and for his father. He saw that they were working hard, and he was worried. His mother also understood him, because his father's clothes were also out of fashion. His mother asked him if this vest model suited his father. Taesan saw his mother more excited and was happy. He told his mother to also quickly choose some clothes for herself. The mother of the owner of a field also had to take care of herself. He pointed to the women's clothing section and told his mother to go over there and try it. But for some reason, there was a lady who paid attention to them. She asked, "Is that Seo-chan?" His mother recognized her as Suja, her old classmate. The old woman said, "Don't call me that, I'm Zu Seowa now." He couldn't believe that this Seowa was there. She was the famous woman of the century, the scammer who shook Korea in 2016. Although her face was different, her name was exactly the same. Taesan didn't expect his mother to know her. His mother said, "That was a long time ago." As soon as she saw his mother was still doing well, even though she was kicked out of the house, she was very surprised. She said, "How did the queen of the school fall into such a funny situation?" Taesan didn't think his mother used to be the queen. His mother told her to go away. She just met her and she didn't like her already. She also rudely asked, why was his mother here? She clearly heard that his mother was living in the countryside. And she also said, his mother didn't look wealthy, did she? His mother turned on the fighting switch and asked, "Are you still looking for trouble?" She apologized, "I didn't mean it." Taesan was bored. He joined the fight with his mother and asked who this fat woman was. Taesan looked at the fat woman with a contemptuous look and asked his mother, "Who is this fat woman?" When she heard that from him, she boiled with anger. She showed her anger on her face. Taesan's mother also felt embarrassed by his words. She also explained that the person he had just provoked was her college friend. And she also reminded him to greet her politely. He greeted the fat lady with a polite bow. And he also forgot to introduce himself as Jang Taesan. The fat lady stood with her arms crossed over her chest, with a haughty look. She started to speak in a sarcastic tone, "Is that your son? He's tall, huh? His face is also bright." She said this and her face began to show hostility. In her head, she was angry because Taesan dared to call her fat. But in her mouth, she still mocked Taesan that he only had the appearance to be a model, but in his head, he probably didn't have anything called knowledge. Taesan was also not happy with this fat lady. In his heart, he was also bitter because he was said to have no knowledge. His mouth still had to keep some politeness. He said, yes. I got into college in Seoul by luck." The fat lady mocked him back, "Oh, really? How lucky, huh?" She moved closer to Taesan's mother, took her hand and smiled a contemptuous smile. Then she said, "Oh, it's like a carp turning into a dragon, huh? Which school did the kid get into in Seoul?" By the way, she also didn't forget to brag about her son who got into Kyungwoo University. Taesan calmly replied, "Law school, Kyungwoo. Why? It seems he got into a good school." Taesan's mother felt tired of the flexing of her old classmate. But she still kept talking and even laughed proudly about her son. She also added the final blow when she asked Taesan which school and department he got into. "Handsome kid?" Taesan didn't hesitate and said, "Law school, Korea University." Hearing this, she started to sweat and exclaimed, "What?" She looked at the annoyed face of her when she knew Taesan got into a school even better than her son's. She couldn't believe it and said, "Taesan is just a brat, so don't lie too much." Did she have a relationship with Zico or something when she raised her voice and argued that he looked like Chang? She pointed her finger straight at Taesan's face and said, "You are just a brat, so how can you get into law school at Korea University?" Taesan was confused by the behavior of this fat lady. His hand started to scratch his head pretending to be innocent. He had to say, "You can verify that information on the internet or let me find it for you to save time." The fat lady clenched her teeth angrily and shook all over but couldn't do anything, so she had to comfort herself that the family of this brat was just that. A smile of charity appeared on Taesan's face. "If you lose this glue, I'll make another dog glue." The fat lady immediately changed the subject. Still with that sarcastic tone, she said, "But this is a high-end brand. What are you two doing here? Come to get a gift voucher?" Taesan thought to himself, this ant is also hard-working to compete with life, huh? A smile of contempt appeared on her face. She continued to emphasize, "Are you sure you don't bring a gift voucher to buy clothes?" Taesan called the saleswoman standing behind him. He looked straight at the fat lady standing and said to the saleswoman, "Please help me choose some clothes that suit my mother. Today, only 5 sets are enough." The fat lady's face turned pale and she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She muttered, "What? 5 sets?" Taesan turned to his mother, looked at her and said, "Price is not a problem. You can choose whatever you like because in my heart my mother is always the best of the best." The saleswoman enthusiastically replied, "Yes, dear customer." Taesan was also very subtle about poking the wheel when he asked the fat lady, "Are you also here to buy clothes?" And he decided to give her a set because after all, she and Taesan's mother were friends. The lady's face was distorted. At this point, when she heard that, the employee seemed scared when the fat lady started to yell, "Do I need you to look at me like a beggar? These cheap things, I wouldn't wear them even if I had them. If you wear them twice, there will be no holes left." This time, the lady pointed her finger at Taesan's mother's face, shouting with a furious expression, "There will be a reunion of friends at the Fightin' Hotel at 7 o'clock next week. You can bring your spouse or partner." And she insisted that Taesan's mother had to come. Taesan thought in his stomach that this lady wanted to play hard with his family. The main purpose of the fat lady was just to make Taesan's mother lose face. But how easy it was when Taesan was still here. Taesan answered for his mother to the fat lady, "You don't have to worry. My mother will definitely attend." While his mother was stunned by his agreement, he turned his face and pretended to signal to his mother, "You will agree, right?" She looked at Taesan with a bit of confusion and just nodded to end the matter. As if she had achieved her goal, the fat lady decided to invite all her classmates to attend and said, "Even if the sky falls, Taesan's mother has to attend." The fat lady turned away with 2 bodyguards who were packing things behind her, and cursed as she walked. She was kicked out of the house and still acted high and mighty. She was really shameless. Taesan stood and watched the fat lady walk away with her bulky body and angry face. He was determined to make her lie under his shoes for what she did today. His face became full of calculation. Taesan thought that being patient in this era was too extravagant. Indulging the enemy was cruel to oneself, and the fat lady would surely pay the price. The next place they went to was a penthouse with a view straight to the Han River. The broker was introducing the penthouse that they had just set foot in. He was trying every way to sell this penthouse. Suddenly, Taesan interrupted him, asking, "If it's so good, why hasn't it been sold yet?" This question made the broker start to be embarrassed. He explained that, although this apartment was very good, because of the US subprime crisis, the real estate situation became extremely tense and completely blocked. Taesan turned to ask his mother, "How do you feel about this place?" She calmly replied, "It's a bit small, but it's okay." That answer made him somewhat confused, because this penthouse was 130 square meters. Taesan asked the broker, "This penthouse costs about 4.5 billion, right?" The broker replied, "This is the highest price in the Olympos complex, and it's also the highest price among the apartments and villas currently available in Korea." Taesan started to inquire about the identity of this broker. The broker also answered bluntly without any hesitation. But when Taesan asked him how much he could really reduce for this penthouse, he began to falter. He seemed to be caught by the tail, and began to reply with a scared voice, "It can be reduced by 10% according to the transaction conditions today." A question from Taesan had already reduced 10%, and this was the principle that his world was operating on. Taesan did not hesitate to ask the guy, "How much can you reduce for 3 units like this?" This question almost shocked the broker completely. He explained, "The consequences of the subprime crisis are not severe yet, so the builders should also take advantage of the decision." The broker was like hitting the jackpot, but he still wanted to know the conditions of Taesan and his mother. Taesan decided to pay 10 billion, including all registration fees and taxes, and he would pay in full at once in cash. Hearing this, the broker was stunned. Did he really believe what he was hearing? And Taesan looked at his mother. Her face was still very calm, when her son had just spent 10 billion, and she looked like she didn't care. The doubts in Taesan's head appeared, because his mother was not a person who didn't care about money, and the atmosphere at that time made him feel very strange. Taesan decided to put that thought aside and invited his mother to continue shopping, because he still had to buy a lot of furniture and utensils. His familiar red car was honking on the way to school under the curious and amazed eyes of the people about Taesan's Bose car. Everyone had to ask questions about it. Those eyes kept looking at his car, and wondered who the owner was. He stopped at the parking lot. But those people were still crowded around Taesan's car. The car door opened, and he got out of his car. His handsome appearance was like Lee Man-ho's version of brown hair with a side bang. The ladies around him must have praised him for a minute. The atmosphere of Korea University, the most prestigious environment in Korea, was a completely different atmosphere, which made Taesan feel very interested. Taesan went to the law department. Everyone around him kept talking about him. No one could believe that he was a law student, because of his attractive physique. He walked in the midst of the whispers about him, and didn't care about them at all. Even though they said that his handsome appearance could attract all the female students. He stopped at a vending machine, and the chatter about him still didn't stop. And they said that Taesan's arrogant look suited Mizan's taste. A silent smile appeared on Taesan's face, because he felt that everyone was going crazy for him. Suddenly, there was a voice behind him saying, "Why don't you buy him a can of water too?" Taesan turned his head and looked behind, and wondered in his head, "Who is this?" A girl with purple hair, wearing a jacket with a fur hood behind. Her legs wore black boots, and rolled up her pants. With this outfit, Taesan really thought that this was a legendary gangster that he had heard from a senior in the art department. She stared at him, and asked again, "Is that okay?" The girl with purple hair covering half of her face under a baseball cap. She reached out to him. Her fingers were long and slender, a beautiful hand. Suddenly, she looked at him, and said, "Only here they sell canned coffee." At this moment, he could see clearly that she had skin as white as the first snow. He was stunned to look at her. At this time, she asked him if he was a law student. The girl said that this was the first time she saw him here, which surprised him, because he also saw her for the first time. She smiled, and said to him, "In this law department, no one is as good as you." He shyly thanked her, but still did not know who she was. She looked at the law students who were looking at them, and said, "They look very mismatched, just like old couples." Then, she looked at him again, and said, "You look very arrogant." He was embarrassed, and handed the can of coffee in his hand to her. But in his heart he was saying, "I study in the same department as those old couples, miss." She smiled, not showing her eyes. She pressed the can of coffee milk to her face, and said, "It's very warm." She complained about the heater in the art room, saying that it was too good, and that she couldn't argue with the law students, because they were too mouthy and jumpy. Then, she asked him if the art and law departments were treated differently. Did he think so? But he didn't know how to answer, because today was also his first day of school. But he still acted like a good boy. Taesan said that she could use his warm bag. She answered a sentence that had nothing to do with it. She said that she drew a lot so her hands were cold and stiff, and maybe because she was too tall and strong, her heart couldn't warm up. He felt that this sister talked in a way that the first and the second sentences had nothing to do with each other. He asked her if she wanted to say something to him. Hearing this, she suddenly asked him what year he was in. Looking at her beautiful face, he suddenly blurted out in his heart, "This sister must be mine." But his face was still shy. Taesan wanted her to introduce herself before asking him, because it was the minimum etiquette. She smiled happily and introduced herself as Yuri, the 6th class of Western art. She reached out her hand and wanted him to introduce himself. He said that he was Jang Taesan, a freshman in the law department. She was surprised by his introduction. She learned that he was a freshman, a new student. She sighed that time passed too quickly. She felt like she had just entered the school, but now she was a junior. She said that although she was old, her soul was always young. She felt sad because time passed too quickly. Taesan felt that this girl was very strange, and said, "Instead of being sad, you should be happy that you only have to study for 2 more years. Learning more knowledge will bring more joy and benefits than you think." He felt that this girl, although a senior, still talked like a young freshman. And he liked this very much. And she was also beautiful beyond comparison. She asked him, "Are you teaching me morals?" Taesan quickly denied it, saying that he just wanted her to change her mind, and use the precious little time at university to create more valuable opportunities for the future. Because we all have the same amount of time. She felt that he talked too much. It was always like that for law students. They always talked about morals and logic. She told him not to say those words until he had gone on a blind date. Then, she stabbed him again, saying, "Although you look good, you talk like an old man. But of course, you are older than this girl. Because you have lived for 30 years. He explained that he only talked like that now, but he would talk differently on a blind date. He would make the girls fall for him. But she misunderstood Taesan's meaning, and said, "Are you only showing this side to me?" The people around them felt that he treated this beautiful girl differently. Although they did not forget to criticize. He explained that he saw her sad, so he wanted to cheer her up. But she became sadder. Then, Taesan smiled like Lee Min-ho, and said, "If I made any mistakes, please forgive me." Yuri happily agreed, because listening to him talk about morals was also pleasant. Besides, she could listen to morals and drink coffee at the same time. The people around them then realized the true identity of Yuri. She was the beauty of the art department, the mistress. They felt lucky to see her here today, and they looked at the crowd of people talking. She was very loud in her head, not knowing what they were saying. Yuji smiled at Taesan and said that he had something to give him, and wanted him to give her his phone. She reached out her hand, but he did not give her his phone. He hesitated and handed his phone to her. She entered her phone number into Taesan's phone. The people in the province were panicked by the situation that was happening too fast and too dangerous. She looked at him and suddenly asked, "Do you have anything to do today?" He was surprised. She gave him her phone and said, "If you are free, contact me." It was like a pyramid scheme, but he quickly replied that he was very free tonight. The people around them were shocked by the events that had happened since then and could not believe that the beauty asked for Taesan's number. In the large lecture hall with many students, he was bored and twirled his pen on the table, lying on the table and feeling that the situation was too difficult. On the podium, a junior student was introducing himself. He said that he had just finished his military service and hoped that everyone would forgive his rude words. Because he was the student council president, he told the students below that there would be an orientation for freshmen and hoped that everyone would have time to attend. The sound echoed throughout the large room, and he continued to say, he wanted to form groups to prepare for this orientation, and each group would have 20 members. So 200 members would be divided into 10 groups. Everyone listened attentively to what he said, and today everyone would meet the seniors in charge of each group and elect the group leader. Then he invited Group 1 to come to the podium. A hand was raised high. A girl called Group 10 to gather, and she was the senior and the leader of this group. She smiled and asked everyone to greet each other. She promised to treat everyone to a lavish meal. She looked at the freshmen and felt that they were too honest, or rather, looked dull. She introduced that the orientation would have the participation of the students from the economics and law departments and some words to reassure everyone. She introduced that the professors in the economics department were very strict and very insecure in front of the law department of the school, and asked everyone to prepare a steel spirit to meet the professors. Taesan stood next to her and felt that this girl was interesting. Taesan stepped forward and greeted her, wanting to know her name. She introduced herself as Azan, a sophomore in the law department, and she said that her name was boring. She smiled and looked at him, wanting him to introduce his name, but when she saw his face, she suddenly exclaimed, "You are so handsome. If you go out to earn money, you will get a lot of money." He was embarrassed and introduced himself as Jang Taesan. Hearing his name, she suddenly remembered something. Then she hit him in the chest and called him a brat. He still did not understand why this girl called him that the first time they met. He asked shyly, "What do you mean?" She smiled and explained, "But if you don't explain, then you are a brat, just a brat." And he felt that he had a nickname on the first day of school. She explained to him that he was the one who said that if he failed the second time in the second year, he would rather not go to school, and had left an impression on the professors and even asked to test his IQ. He only understood his nickname when he heard that. It was a bit rustic. Teo sighed and asked, "So what?" He felt that he was looked down on by his seniors here. And the senior looked at him with contempt. He smiled and looked down on this senior. "Oh, no. For everyone, your assets have reached billions of dollars." And everyone else, the senior, was a bit surprised by Taesan's reaction. She didn't understand why he suddenly laughed. And he felt that with the value of hundreds of billions of won created by himself every day, he was not a spoiled kid, but he was Jang Taesan, the richest man in Korea. At this time, on the phone, the voice on the other end of the line was asking if he brought the car here. These days, freshmen are really scary. Sitting on his warhorse, he heard the noisy sounds outside. They talked to each other about where to eat and drink and negotiated the meeting place for today. He answered the phone and asked where the other end of the line was. He would pick up right away. At this time, after hearing the location, he started the car and drove there. Sitting in the car, he decided to perform a show for everyone. The buffalo knows how to spin. He turned the steering wheel and turned the car 180 degrees in front of everyone to show his class. In front of the screams of astonishment and admiration, the car and the horn blended together. He sped away like a gust of wind, leaving behind a trail of smoke. Yuji was surprised by his car and asked him if students were allowed to drive or not. While her hair was messy, she was still thinking that he was a rich kid, right? He was rich and still thoughtful to warm up the seat before she got on. Looking at him driving, she felt that maybe he was flirting with her right now. Tessa looked at Yuji and winked at her, reminding her to fasten her seatbelt because he drove a bit fast. Then he asked her if she knew a fun place to go. She smiled shyly and said that she wanted to go to the noodle shop of the old lady who cursed. He quickly agreed. She was surprised by his quick response and thought that he had lived in this area. Just saying the name and he knew the location. In the car, Yuji praised him for driving very well and wondered if this was his car. He answered that it was true, making her feel sure that he was a tycoon because the sports car was worth hundreds of millions. She asked where he lived. He smiled and said that he lived in the vicinity. She wondered that maybe his parents had to be very rich, but he replied that his father had planted an apple orchard. Yuji still thought that the apple orchard could be a very large farm because only the very rich would have a spoiled child like this. But he said that it was only a big one in the region, but the organic apples were hard to sell. Yuji thought that if organic apples were hard to sell, then he must have said it as a joke. She continued to ask what his mother did for a living. Taesan answered that his mother was just a housewife and a painter. She was very curious how he could afford a Porsche if his family was like that. She asked him directly, "Who bought you this car?" Because it was very expensive and she didn't think he could buy it himself. He explained that he had started his own business very early and the car was also bought by himself, which surprised Yuji very much. They arrived at the old lady's restaurant, where she often scolded people. The fried rice on the stove was golden and smoky. It looked delicious. The old lady quickly recognized Yuji and called her the Moonlight Girl, which surprised Taesan by this nickname. Yuji was happy but a little embarrassed to reply to the old lady. Seeing that it was the first time she brought her boyfriend here, the old lady felt curious. But Yuji explained that Taesan was not her boyfriend but just her junior. The old lady didn't believe her and felt that she was funny because she could tell that she was flirting with Taesan. The old lady said, "Everyone here has eyes, they can see it. How dare you lie to me?" Seeing that everyone was looking too much, she quickly scolded them for being rude. The girls in the restaurant thought Taesan was very handsome, and the boys in the restaurant thought Yuji was a model. Yuji was surprised by Taesan's frying skills. She asked him if he was a chef or not, because he could cook so well. The old lady looked at Taesan and felt very familiar and strange because it was the first time she met him. She looked at him with a probing eye and asked him if he knew her. He was embarrassed to say that he had just met her for the first time, but the old lady was very puzzled. She still felt that he looked very familiar and she thought that maybe she had dementia. The old lady looked at Yuji and said, "You must catch this boy." Yuji was embarrassed and smiled. She explained that Taesan looked like those who lived with money piled up like mountains, but Yuji looked a bit shabby. She thought that Yuji had caught a golden turtle for herself. She enthusiastically encouraged her, "If you have a chance, you must hold on to it, you know?" Yuji blushed and nodded to please her. Then the old lady looked at Taesan and said. She said to come often and even if Taesan brought another girl, she would hide it for him. This time it was Taesan's turn to smile shyly, blush and ask her why she did that. The old lady pointed to the other female guests in the shop who were drooling over him. She said, "Don't you see the look of those girls when they see you? Why do you ask that?" Suddenly she looked at the two of them and asked, "You are young but you don't drink alcohol?" She advised that they should drink more alcohol to speed up the process. The shop was filled with laughter and the two decided to order a bottle of beer and a bottle of soju. He decided to make a bomb drink for Yuji to try. The laughter did not stop, and the hungry eyes of the girls in the shop also stared at Taesan. Yuji looked at Taesan with suspicion that he had met the old lady before and asked, "Did you come here a lot?" "Because you are very good at stir-frying pork." He smiled and told her that his hobby was cooking, making her laugh. She wondered why he ordered alcohol and beer when he was only a minor. Drinking these things was against the law. He smiled and told her a secret that the old lady's eldest son was the chief prosecutor of the sole prosecutor's office, the second son was a senior police officer, and the youngest daughter was a judge. So drinking here would not be caught. Yuji was very surprised to hear this and asked how he could know. But his reaction made him sure that she also knew this, but why did she know? But thinking like that he still answered what the seniors in the law school told him. She felt this was strange because it was a secret, and he felt that she was more suspicious than him. He did not know who she was that could know the secret. The doubts of both of them ended with a glass of foaming beer bomb. Yuji was surprised when he saw him mixing beer and alcohol together. Seeing that action, she felt that she was about to meet the devil. He quickly explained that he was making a bomb drink. She did not know what a bomb drink was. He picked up a glass of rice wine and drank it all in one gulp in Yuji's horrified eyes. The beer can was still stuck in his mouth. He looked at Yuji and asked if she wanted to try one. He felt that Yuji was easy to get drunk. Seeing him drink so well, she also felt doubtful and wanted to try it. Seeing Yuji's face like that, Taesan did not want to force her to try it, so he said that if she did not like it, he would not force her to try it. He said that Yuji felt that he was looking down on her, so she wanted to try it more. The two quickly blended into the atmosphere of the shop, clinked glasses and started the Yuji party. After drinking a glass, she was very surprised by the delicious taste of this new beer. She wanted to drink more. The glass of beer was empty. The beer in Yuji's mouth was very sweet, different from the taste she usually drank. She quickly asked him to make more. For herself, she kept asking to drink like that. Afraid that she would get drunk because when mixed, the alcohol content would be higher than normal, he advised Yuji not to drink more. But the alcohol demon did not stay still. She said that she was very good at drinking and asked him to pour more for her. Suddenly, a girl came to the table and called Yuji's name, asking if she came here to drink. It turned out to be Asin. She was Yuji's friend. She was very surprised to see Yuji sitting with another guy. But when she came to the front, she found out that the two were acquaintances. It turned out that this young man was Taesan, making Asin very surprised. However, when the person who went drinking with Yuji was Taesan, Asin asked Yuji in a panic if she knew Taesan. Yuji and Taesan also felt very embarrassed to be in this situation. Yuji stuttered and explained in vain. Taesan quickly explained to break the awkward atmosphere that he had fallen for Yuji at first sight and had invited her to have a drink and get to know her. Hearing his explanation, Asin felt that he was a freshman who came to study to date, and scolded him for never being successful. But she quickly changed her tone and praised him for being very capable, which surprised Taesan by this girl's flip-flop. Asin said that Yuji had been single since she was in her mother's womb, so Taesan had the ability to go with Yuji was very awesome. She also said that if she was a man, she would definitely hit Yuji. Hearing himself being praised, Taesan felt very embarrassed. Meanwhile, Yuji was full of black lines by Asin's words. Seeing that the snacks were already on the table, Asin felt that she was lucky today. She quickly called the students in her group to sit with Taesan's table and join the party. Asin took Yuji's beer glass, and said that she would drink her beer without anyone's consent. Asin quickly drank the beer in her hand in front of the two horrified faces of the owners of this table. Asin felt that her beer was too delicious. She wondered if this was a new brand of beer, completely different from the beers she had drunk. Asin quickly urged the freshmen to sit at the table and start the party. Asin looked at Taesan and asked him if he wanted to drink beer or soju, which made Taesan very embarrassed, and said that he would get it himself. Asin heard Taesan's voice, started to ovulate and praised Taesan's voice for being very cool. A freshman came up and asked Asin, "Who is the beautiful girl with purple hair sitting in front?" Asin asked the freshman if Yuji was pretty. Asin introduced Yuji as a third-year student of Western art and her high school friend. Their families also knew each other. Yuji smiled and greeted her juniors and introduced herself as Son Yuji and invited her juniors to join the party. The boys saw the girl and their eyes lit up. They quickly agreed. What else to wait for? Everyone started to raise their glasses and congratulate themselves for entering the university environment. Then they drank all night long. The happiness was like a movie. At that time, Taesan was busy pumping alcohol for everyone. Yuji didn't know that she had to go through the hellish feeling the next morning. Her memory was interrupted when she was drunk. She woke up and didn't know who she was or where she was. She only smelled the warm blanket, her hair was messy, and her face was dirty after a night of drinking. At this time, she was not fully awake. She quickly regained her composure, sat up angrily, not knowing where she was, in a room that did not look like a girl's room and not knowing what had happened last night. She quickly sobered up, flipped the blanket and looked at her clothes. She breathed a sigh of relief because her clothes were still intact as last night. Suddenly, Taesan's voice came into the room saying, "If you are awake, please take a shower and come to the kitchen." After identifying whose voice it was, she felt so embarrassed that her face turned red and screamed because she had spent the night at a boy's house. It turned out to be young Taesan's voice. She felt very awkward, smiled and reassured herself that it would be fine. She opened the door and stepped out of the bedroom because the first thing to do was to meet him first. Looking out the window, she found out that this was Gangnam, opposite the Han River. She heard Taesan's voice urging her to come to the dining table. She walked into the kitchen and was surprised that the house was so spacious. Looking at the dining table, she was so shocked that her eyes widened. All the food on the table was very rich and diverse. It could be said that this was a meal that could only be cooked by a professional chef. Yuji asked him shyly if anything unexpected had happened last night and how they parted ways with everyone after drinking. Taesan smiled and asked her if she didn't remember anything at all. His face was so sure that it surprised her, asking her if she didn't remember anything that happened last night. It made her very scared. Taesan looked at her and smiled, asking why she reacted like that. She blushed because she didn't know what he was talking about, making her confused and afraid. Taesan continued to tease her, asking her why she treated him like that, making her feel like going crazy in front of his reaction. Suddenly he asked her why she liked him, making her panic in front of his words. He said that clearly yesterday he had said that he liked her from the first glance. Hearing this, she was speechless. Playing dumb, he felt very happy. Seeing her reaction, he was satisfied because everything he said just now was nonsense. In the morning, he reached out to Yuji and said that he would take responsibility for everything, making Yuji sweat. She turned pale, not knowing what situation she was in. She was like a young girl who had just grown up. The Rolex watch was 11 a.m. in Korean time and 10 p.m. in US time. Taesan thought that maybe Robert hadn't slept yet, so he decided to make a call. The other end of the line quickly picked up, and Robert's voice rang out. Taesan asked Robert to buy some stocks for him. Robert quickly replied, asking what kind of stocks he wanted to buy. Taesan wanted to buy stocks of the Fiddle Hotel, and he offered a starting price of $10 billion. Robert quickly agreed in a respectful manner. Taesan knew that the tourism and hotel business would suffer from the economic recession this time, and the stock prices would drop continuously on Saturday this week. And more importantly, his mother's class reunion would be at the Fiddle Hotel, so he wanted to quickly take over it and help his mother regain her confidence. He wanted Robert to buy at least 40% of the stocks and attack both the domestic and foreign markets. And he wanted to start as soon as the trading session opened tomorrow morning. The way to buy was to lower the auction price, then start buying from the bottom up. And if everything went smoothly, he could buy it for half the current price in 3 days. Robert quickly responded and followed his instructions. The scene switched to the lively high school where Taesan had studied.